jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Jonathan Mark has returned. Woo!
Mm-hmm. I'm back.
Oh man, and tackling just kind of. I'm gonna call this short talk just creature talk.
Yep.
This is all it is to it. So, how did you just kind of come to love just creature movies, per se?
Well, for me, it was actually my brother that got me into a lot of creature films.
Nice. Is he older or was he just?
Yeah, he was the older brother. Yeah, it was mostly like Godzilla at first, and then later on, it'll be the ones we'll be talking about.
Universal horror, all the other stuff. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess people like to act like Spielberg is good at only one thing versus another. I exploded onto him because his name was constantly brought up. He had done so many movies. He was escapism with heart, and that's just why I rallied to him. And since he was one of the ones who utilized Industrial Light and Magic and all the other stuff, I got into so many other movies, and I just was always wanting to see anything that was like a visual effects thing, and it was hard to come by because my video store sucked, and some of the movies weren't the most appropriate to watch, and sometimes they weren't necessarily good, but it's like I just had that, regardless of whether they were good at storytelling, I just always loved that ability for people to create suspense using the likes of Stan Winston, Robert Kurtzman, all those guys. And
Yep.
I guess you could definitely say, we'll touch on Jurassic Park here just as a little starter. I just that was a big deal because it was kind of blending Spielberg's Jaws mentality with a lot of aliens kind of thing. I guess you could say even a Die Hard scenario where you got people trapped in a place trying to get out of a building. It's gone berserk bananas. So it just had that kind of fun. It was much like the theme park itself. You thought you were watching a theme park that had been caught on tape. It was out of control. And more or less, I dug dinos. I'd always kind of studied them briefly and everything in science, but it was like, okay, now I'm actually seeing this is the most talked about thing regarding dinos. So yeah, and I was already used to seeing plenty of robots and other stuff, and it's like, yeah, no, I like dinos. There's just something about it, just seeing giant creatures, and it's none of this over the top whiny, a bunch of annoying kids going no, and attacking a hunter. It wasn't any Disney crapola. It was all just like, okay, no, you're gonna see a bunch of Indiana Jones type adventurers. Yeah. They're trying to understand the creatures while get away from them. That's just a lot of fascination. It was one of the few movies where people were actually taking note of the trend of how they blend in science with escapism. Is like, okay, cool. And even though it's still sci-fi fantasy, is like, okay, there's some little action horror stuff, some gotcha moments, and it's like that. They try to do it a lot now, and it just doesn't work for me. I just feel left out of the loop. Like I would much rather be watching something cheesy on Sci-Fi Channel, and they don't really do too many of those anymore. So I just like, yeah, no, I'm good. And I guess, what was your introduction to these movies? You come up on them later, or almost around the time that it was becoming a thing?
We'll return after these messages.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Hey, I heard you like movies.
I heard you like to hustle.
I heard you like podcasts.
Well, guess what?
There's a podcast for you out there called The Home Video Hustle.
Damn right.
Every Friday, we talk about whatever movie PJ picks out the bag. What does that mean? Every Wednesday on our YouTube page, I put a bunch of movies in a bag, and PJ picks one out at random. And then we just watch it. We talk about it for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever we feel like doing, wherever the conversation leads us.
But do we actually talk about the movie?
Most of the time. Tangents galore.
Yes.
So believe me, we may be a movie podcast, but it's not always about movies. We may talk about video games,
Music.
Yeah, that's the big one, music. Sometimes we might get a little bit of politicalness in there.
Yes.
Sometimes we may just, we know what we like to do. We like to tell stories, PJ.
Yes.
I am the master storyteller
Yes.
of the podcast realm. Undefeated. So if you like to hear about movies, video games, whatever foolishness comes to our mind, the most random stuff you could think of, check out the Home Video Hustle. You can find us on the Stitchers,
Yes.
the Google Play,
Yes.
Apple Podcasts,
What else?
Podbean,
What else?
Podcast Addict,
Goddamn.
all that. Ain't no reason you can't get your hustle on. We everywhere, worldwide, baby.
Hustle, motherfucking hustle.
Hey, we can't cuss in the promo, PJ. We
Ah.
gotta be family friendly. There may be podcasts out there that don't want his hair say
Ah. Ah.
all
Yeah.
that good fun stuff.
Well, you.
Don't run the listeners away, PJ.
I'm sorry.
But this is going kind of long.
Yes.
So we'll end this and say, hey, check out the Home Video Hustle every Friday on all the various podcast outlets. Peace.
Peace.
As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. And while Witch didn't make it to the top of the world, he did make the Gangs of Hollywood podcast. So join the gang and enjoy a movie review podcast about movie gangs, gangsters, mobsters, and the mayhem they cause. You can find GOH Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at GOH Pod at www.gohpod.com, as well as your favorite podcast listening app. And remember, say hello to your little friend for me.
If you take two old punk rockers who are past their prime, put them in front of a movie screen and give them a podcast, what do you get? Cinema Punks. Cinepunks. It's the mixtape of movies.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds?
Necrophilia.
Amelia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of here.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
little
popping
history
up.
all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
did
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. Whether one last plot holes or gratuitous movies, it's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy at eilfm.podbean.com.
Welcome to Who Was She podcast. I am your host, Tara Jabari. After a decade working in documentaries, marketing, and all things digital media, I found that podcasting is a strong medium to share stories. After years of producing for others, I decided to start my own biographical podcast. Who Was She will focus on the life of a woman throughout Baha'i history. The first season is about Lydia Zamenhof. Lydia's story explores the subjects of the power of language and faith. Her father invented the universal language Esperanto, and she came from a Jewish family and became a Baha'i. She grew up during World War I and was killed during World War II in a concentration camp, despite heroic efforts to save her life. How can one person's life intersect with so many others, connect across borders, and inspire a biography which inspired this podcast? Over the next few weeks, I will share her story with you and the lives that were most affected by her and those who affected her life as well. They include her father, Ludwig Zamenhof, her spiritual mother, American journalist Martha Root, and the Baha'i German soldier Fritz Mako, who worked for the resistance undercover while having to serve the Nazi Party. I want to thank the author Wendy Heller and George Ronald Publishing for their blessing to let me use Heller's biography, Lydia, The Life of Lydia Zamenhof, Daughter of Esperanto, as a main and instrumental resource for this podcast. So please subscribe and learn about this amazing woman who traveled through 3 continents in an effort to bring unity through the power of language. You can also find more information on our Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Who Was She Podcast. Music was composed and performed by Sam Red. I am your host, Tara Jabari. Join us next time as we begin our journey about Lydia Zamenhof.
Hi, everybody. It's Mac Jackson. I wanted to invite you to a new site called the Forever Adventure Network. This website has everything: pictures, videos, blogs. There's original music by Harmony Constant, 2 podcasts. One is the MacGyver podcast, where we celebrate Richard Dean Anderson, his iconic roles, and how it's influenced our lives. There's episode discussions, interviews, and life conversations. The second podcast is the Never Gets Old podcast, where we celebrate all the best things that we love in life, from TV, movies, music, and comics. The site is also the home for the MacGyver SG-1 audio series, an ongoing adventure series that continues the adventures of MacGyver and SG-1. There are also multiple stores to choose from for all of your pop culture and adventure needs. Come on by and check us out today. And thanks for joining the adventure.
Are you sick of the same old stale podcasts? Well, then join Vanessa and Darren as they dissect movies of all kinds. The 2 lifelong cinema lovers bring their favorites, curiosities, and first-time watches to the operating table and inject them with a healthy dose of snark. Then there's the waiting room, where they examine books and short stories. So just look for them on Apple Podcasts and where fine podcasts are available. They're part of the Legion Podcast Network. Follow them on Twitter at VDClinicPod. Join them on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/VDClinicPod. Or email them at vdclinicpod@gmail.com. They're ready to cure what ails you. And still, they just might be a little contagious.
We now continue with our program.
Were you late to the Jurassic Park deal, or did you kind of discover it around the time it was kind of a thing? Or...
No. I discovered it early when I was a kid, but I got to watch the first 2 first, and then I saw a third one in the theater afterwards.
Okay, so reasonable. Just kind of it was one of the few creature features you didn't have to be worried about, seeing too many inappropriate things and what else. It was just kind of
Yeah, you could say that.
it had a little something for everybody, and didn't have any scientists doing anything questionable. It was just like, yeah, that dude's a traitor. That one, he's all about money. Right, so they're all going to meet their comeuppance, and you could easily mistake this for a PBS documentary because Richard Attenborough is here, and I have the greatest suspicion he's about to narrate this movie. And yeah, from that point on, I would often hear critics say, this movie is a good or a bad Jurassic Park knockoff, because it seemed like that was the thing. It was becoming marketable again. If you weren't doing an Alien type movie or a Predator type movie, you were doing a Jurassic Park type movie. And most often nowadays, it seems like every movie kind of blends all of that together, so.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, and it just becomes one, diarrhea Latin milkshake is just like, okay, it's just too much. It's hurting my stomach. I guess the overall appeal of it was just Sam Neill as Dr. Grant's, just his humor, his dry dialogue delivery. You could have sworn it's actually Harrison Ford. It's that kind of thing. Laura Dern, Jeff Goldblum as the other experts, and then you got the kids weren't annoying for once. It's like, for the most part, it's like, okay. So, and the other stuff,
ones, unlike some movies.
Yeah, and the car chases were awesome, and I think that's just why it appealed to me. It just had that sense of, I want to see where this goes.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And moving on to Lake Placid and Anaconda. Did you see these? I guess, they were on Sci-Fi Channel and TNT all the time. And I would have never guessed that Placid was just so deliberately campy, just having all these, people who you could swear are from something like Fargo is out and about, just having just outrageous dialogue. Is like, well, that's quite a mighty log we got there, I think what was interesting about Anaconda is it works as a 50s movie, but it's just got so many just actors who don't seem to be aware of what kind of movie they're in. So I definitely recommend their Versus movie, because that movie was just campy as all get out. It's just to where IMDb trolls were even acting like Nicki Minaj was in it. I'm like, because get it, it's got Anaconda. And it's like, no, it's fortunately got no out of place, out of work rappers. It's just, they randomly fight, and it's like Boa versus Python. You're like, that was kind of goofy and kind of amusing. So I guess seeing the increase of that, Tremors and Octopus, and even the Bats movies, I wouldn't watch them at first. I would only see parts of them, and then I just saw them again just years later, and it's like, you know what? These are what these are. These are way more fun than, say, the typical kind of creature feature, which often goes on too long, has the tone all over the place, or just just too much wrong sauce. Tremors isn't really my thing, but I would be lying if I said there wasn't any entertainment value. If there's plenty of stuff to embrace. Fred Ward, Michael Caros is in all freaking 6 of them, and Kevin Bacon, and just it was basically, it's just wacky. And it's like they took one of the chapters of Dune with the sandworms, but then just made it be an entire 90-minute just, oh shit, and just all the people there on this planet happen to be hillbillies who were like, oh shit.
But not like the stereotypical hillbillies. They actually
that's the
make
other
them
thing too.
relatable and likable.
Right. As opposed to clearly just NRA wannabes, and just like, and you were gonna mention the what's it called? You just said it. The Peter Hyams movie, the Relic. Relic. And this one was like fresh off. This came out like the same year as other goofy ones like Arachnophobia, and it's like that was when spider movies were just fun as opposed to gross. And it seems like all of them from that point on were trying to be like Predator or even Starship Troopers, but minus just any real care put into either the effects or the other one. And this one, this one was one of the few ones where it didn't matter if the creatures were all CGI or all practical. It just had enough dedication on every end, and it kept the lowbrow churning and being well nourished, I guess you could say.
Yeah. All right.
And every other movie just seems to just always get lost by Act 3, to where it's like, hey, we're about to kill the monster, but by this point you're bored. Sorry. Not sorry. We don't know where those millions went. Oh, that's right. The actor was getting too much bang for their buck. So, it kind of just got us out of trashy Roger Corman and just kind of just went for just more, just pure, just this is wacky. And I guess that brings me. Octopus was just wild because it didn't really have any characters I wanted to follow, but it was just kind of fun seeing it. One them filmed like a submarine type thriller, and then just again everybody's trapped, all these Russians, American guys, and wreckage, and just harmless fun. Bats I especially recommend because it's got Lou Diamond Phillips and the director giving some information on how the movie was made and just being campy as all get out. But the movie itself, it pretty much is just a straightforward, the birds type movie. And,
yeah, I did see that. That's one. I'm not big on bats, to be honest.
Me neither. I just thought it was just basic and just unremarkable, but just straightforward creature feature that just a Friday night movie, not a best of all time.
Yeah, no, especially with the effects. That's the one thing.
Yeah, the effects kind of just varied for me, but it's
Yeah.
wild how it got an R rating, and yet the effects are just so just brief gotcha moments, and it's like, yeah, I've seen worse, I think, but in terms of PG-13, that would have been a lot. That should have just been a light one, if not a strong one, because
Yeah.
there's so many other ones that have such nightmarish, just borderline X-rated visuals. So it's like that one that could have handled a PG-13 either cut that you see of it. So it's like when I think of R, I think of something that's just like constant, ripping people apart, shit like that. It's like,
Yeah.
and I guess that brings me mainly to Mimic, because around that same time, I was seeing it become pretty commonplace for everything by Dimension Films to have a, brief theatrical run and then turned direct-to-video, made-for-TV creature features. And that one, how did you come into that one? That one was just always kind of mentioned as most unusual creature features of the 90s lists, and I was like, okay. A lot of people.
I'm trying to think. That's one. I think I watched at the same time as The Relic, and that one I've always liked. I know Del Toro prefers the director's cut, which I still haven't seen because I don't know really what's on there, but
probably just different cuts in there. I don't know.
I guess. But I've always liked the cast in that.
Part 2 was kind of just a standalone feature with some decent just suspense and visuals. Part 3 I thought was just fun because you had the king of creature features, Lance Henriksen, as some garbage, bug neutralizer, and just in there lighting them on fire, and the music score was really good. And this is basically around the same time where I start paying attention to all kinds of music, because a lot of musicians out there who still don't have their work even released on even simple CD, there's just no market for it, but was cool seeing, it's around the time where you just stay after the credits to hear the just mix of guitar and electronic riffs. So I guess that brings us also just to the furry little critters, also known as so there's the 4 of them. It's actually 5 technically. So Munchie, Ghoulies, Critters, Gremlins, and Troll.
Yeah. Oh god.
Yeah, I dared. I shouldn't have let it out of the box, but I did. A little bugger got on me. So holy shit. Ooh. I think these movies both increased in popularity and suffered a bit, because you want to talk about a market full with oversaturation. If one person wasn't getting mixed up with the other, then they were going to one and then going to the other one, mistaking it for the last one that they took their kid or other person.
Yeah.
Too. So, and this gets even more crazy because even stuff like hobgoblins just insistent that they wrote this, 4 years before this and that. It's like, you might have written it similar, but regardless of what studio head heard another studio head talking about, I mean, words get us around, no problem. Roger Corman always knows what everyone's up to and releases a ripoff of such. And this creature movies were always in demand. And so if you weren't doing, again, just an Alien or Close Encounters type movie, then you were just doing just some other kind of naughty version of Extro or even ET, for lack of a better word. So I think Let's start with Ghoulies. I would always hear about these. They were always the worst ranked on every movie site, and I never saw them at any movie store, so I just never had really any. I didn't really ever want to bother with them. They looked worse than Puppet Masters, so I was just like, okay, next. And I think I just would always occasionally see parts of them. I'm sure you can find some of them on YouTube. It's just like, God, just dire, very dull, and I'm just like, not the worst in the world, but still pretty boring.
I think I was misadvertised too, because didn't I hear the first one like they're barely in it, from what I know?
That's just it too. It's like it wanted to be so many things, and it got dumped. It was a thing before Dump Day was a thing, where all the bad movies come out in the spring and all the good ones come out in the summer. And it's like this one, I don't know when it came out, but it definitely was just one of those like it'll only play in theaters for 2 weeks and then it'll instantly be eaten up by the movie channels. Happy? And there's no point in watching this or Critters in any order because they have no correlation. They are related in the creatures only. Critters, I understand the appeal of. I'm not the audience for it, but how did you come across this?
Well, that's actually one of the other ones that I grew up on was Critters. I'm actually a big fan of the first two, especially.
Oh, yeah?
The original, I'm a big fan of. Especially, that was one that's more on a closed location, and you have the family aspect of it, which are actually likable people. Unlike in some movies when they make them unlikable.
Or just like these people clearly are not real people.
And but you also got like Billy Zane in a small role.
Right.
And you got Emmett Walsh as the cop, even though I actually prefer the cop and the one who played it replaced him in the second one. The second one.
There you go.
As that character.
D. Wallace Stone for just fresh off ET, just so
yeah.
You got Scott Grimes of ER and Orville fame in there. I'm sure he gets plenty of fan mail about it.
Well, yeah, and that's how I got introduced to him was watching these. And
there you go.
I've always liked his character and Don Oppa's character as Charlie. And
then
we get to the second one. That one's interesting because how I discovered that one was at a video store, and they had the cover, which is the Critter Ball. They had that was the cover they had with the Critter Ball, and I'm like, oh, I want to watch this, and that had some disturbing stuff in there, even if it was lighter than the first one, like especially the Easter Bunny scene. That's one. If a little kid, they're probably gonna be horrified.
Kind of the movie you really don't want to watch with family, even though it's got a PG rating, because it's like, it's kind of dark. It's not the most grim or morbid like Tim Burton level, but it's still pretty fucked up. And then unknown Lynn Shay is also in this, so that's kind of interesting.
Oh yeah, she's in the first two. She's like the assistant to the sheriff.
There you go.
And, although honestly, I prefer her in that role in that too. And the stuff she does now, but
right. Probably the best recent movie I saw her in was The Final Wish, which I thought was just straightforward. Careful what you wish for, even though it's very slow and not really just horror and genre only, rather than oh my god, scary. More or less, these are kind of a slow one for me now. Everyone can still watch them on HBO Max if they want. I haven't seen Part 3. That's best known as the one where Leo DiCaprio makes his debut and gets eaten.
Oh yeah, I saw that one and 4 back to back. So.
And this one, didn't this get an R rating?
Which one, 3 or 4?
Part 3.
I think I got that was also either PG or PG-13. I don't remember which rating.
Okay.
Even though
PG-13, my bad.
Well, honestly, it should have been PG, especially because I felt like it was for kids rather than because that's the tamest of the 4.
It's also the one. It's not even set in the same town. was the first of the franchise to go to direct-to-video.
You have
Ugh.
just one apartment building with a bunch of characters you want to die.
There you go.
And unfortunately, well, I'm not gonna spoil everything, but the ones that you want to die don't, which is like, are you kidding me?
Glad I have not seen that one.
And-
I've seen part 4.
Which I don't mind. For the most
That one had Brad Dourif and
Angela Bassett.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Probably a movie she doesn't see as many residuals for.
She didn't know about it.
I just was kind of just average on that one. It's kind of like part 2. It's like, okay, watchable. Not gonna remember much about it. Either way, it's leagues better than Critters Attack, which is just the most cheapest Canadian. It has Dee Wallace reappear, and voice actor Stephen Blum giving it his all, but do not for a minute think it is worth a moment of your time. It was one of those. I was bored literally 5 seconds into it. It's like no care put into any of it. Even all the horror sites that typically like trashy ones were like, yeah, this is too much, and
just annoying characters and effects. Oh my god.
The effects were bad. They didn't try. They were
especially them trying to make it like Gremlins.
They were trying to make it like Gremlins, but then it's like they went all unrated, R-rated. It's like, what is your audience? I've never seen so much inconsistency. It's like, if you're gonna pick an audience, stick with it, as opposed to I'm gonna make part 1 and 2 BR, and I'm gonna make the last 5 be PG-13. It's like, I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
And it was just barely a movie. It was a rough set. I don't think I've texted longer at a movie.
Oh man.
So Troll, I guess we'll just gloss over. I had no idea such a franchise had just had varied from person to person. The first one was like a full moon movie. The other one was like a cheapo, and made even more popular is just so bad it's good cinema. Riff Tracks also taken a plot of it, and part 3 was like not even supposed to be part 3, but they just titled it that just because they needed.
I didn't know they have one.
Yeah, it's hard to come by too. It's like, yeah, if you hate yourself and you want to waste your paycheck, go out and find it. But why? Why?
I didn't even see the first one. I know about the first one.
It had partially naked Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
Yeah, I know she was in it. I think it's
Michael,
her husband, actually.
Yeah, and Michael Moriarty, fresh off the stuff years before Law and Order. So it's like,
oh wow.
Yeah, this seeing part of it now, I was just like, that one's a rough sit as well. It's like there was just nothing that made you think, why would you even want to title it that way? You're better off just calling it just some other kind of mythical creature name. I don't know why you want it to be related to that other boring movie. So I guess Gremlins I just instantly fell in love with. It was a mix of Looney Tunes and again just creature stuff. It's got both horror as well as some mild sci-fi, because the science behind the whole thing, and then some not just action, but just some adventure and again dark comedy as well as dark fantasy. So it's like there's a reason it did better. Joe Dante and Spielberg agreed with each other. Dante had done Piranha. Spielberg had liked it. He's like, that's the best of the Jaws knockoffs. It was very clever. Instantly clicked, and the only real interference he did was like, I think he just got to tidy up the ending just a little tad. I definitely recommend nowadays just watch it as a double feature, both 1 and 2 as a double feature with Howling 1.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Totally. Yeah, they almost feel like they're in the same world just because of the whole. Basically, Gremlins is on the kid-friendly side of town, and Howling is in a more rural, foresty area side of town. Reporters, prostitutes, barflies are going by, and I like all of these just because they just were that rare mix of just being grim while also just organizing the jokes as opposed to just feeling like afterthoughts, patting them after the fact, where you're like, what? No, what's that mean? And there just wasn't any kind of doubt in whatever was going on. I just got to applaud them for doing their best. And that's more than I can say about Hobgoblins, which I recently rewatched the Mystery Science Theater episode of that. And let me tell you, they give it their all. It is funny, but that movie, you want to just, it leaves a really, really bad aftertaste. It's just like, God, I fucking hate everybody in that movie.
After I watched the episode.
Oh yeah, and you can tell. I mean, and everyone's like, "Oh, you were too mean to the director." It's like, yeah, well, he had it coming. It sucked. His brain was definitely filled with some kind of fecal matter. Because, good God, I mean,
well, too much cocaine now. Like
too much cocaine. These underage teenagers basically having sex with each other. All these other. There's a good movie in there somewhere, but it's not that one. It's like just too much, just incessant, just not even trying to make sure the gag is working. It's just like, oh my God, how long has this been going on? This is too much, and it's very annoying. And even the stuff they cut out is like, thank God it's doesn't have anything to do with the rest of the movie. It should have been just an hour versus 60 minutes. It's stupid.
Well, with that, well, also speaking of the Gremlins movies, what I especially love in the second movie is like the parody of Rambo.
Oh yeah, and
yeah,
so many people feel like it's too much. I just love how it even opens up with Hulk Hogan in the theater, and you're seeing, again, them watching some John Wayne Western, depending on what cut of the movie you're watching. It varies. The VHS and DVD version used to be different. I've only seen it on TV, so I think I got the theatrical cut, but it's on HBO Max as of now, so I definitely am due for a rewatch of it. But it's always just been one of those. Everyone has their preferences, including even creator Joe Dante, and I'm just one of those. Is like, it all blends together pretty well. I don't have a problem with either film. I feel like they have enough of both, and it's kind of why I like the first two Wishmasters. They have that rare sense of creature shit hitting the fan, creature mayhem unleashing, and then just tidying it up. And all before the 90-minute mark. And it's like every other movie nowadays kind of just, again, they love to have multiple rewrites. They don't really understand. They just think you got to just go overkill. And it's like, it's too much. You got to have a bit of everything. And I think more or less Zach Galligan, who had been in the Waxwork films as well, he was comfortable with it. Phoebe Cates was comfortable with it. It was all just it's just delightful cartoon that wasn't over the top enough to be Ren and Stimpy violent, but still just kids caution if anything. It's just like it's just a healthy mix. The general audience is gonna like it all. So if you want to watch it with your kids, you can, without them being too grossed out, and at the same time the gorehounds will eat it up too, and all without being too much. It's like there's a excess layer, and it's the same thing with all these other movies with content. It's like, okay, I get it, and I think the other musical numbers and other stuff is good. Christopher Lee is great as the mad scientist.
Yeah, I love that.
And the twin brothers who were also playing the guard who gets shanked in the eye from Terminator 2.
That's right.
It was weird seeing them in there. I had to blink for them. I was like, where have I seen those two? Oh, okay. And
you even got a critic in there, if I remember correctly.
Something, yeah. And
film critic, isn't it Linda Moulton, I think, shows up in it at one point?
Yeah. It's just like it's another just kind of fun tongue-in-cheek thing. Is like, see what we did there, Sonny Boy, and I think again, there's enough supervision by Spielberg. The effects department is delivering, and it says a lot because they changed up. They had Tom Woodruff, from Alien Free, and a bunch of other guys, and Paul Tippett help out. And then this one, I think Tippett was still there, but they had a few other different guys doing the puppeteering and everything. And I mean, for fuck's sake, I got a Gizmo doll.
I'd love to get one because
oh yeah,
that's one I always. That's actually one of the few creatures I do call cute. They And what's weird about that is I didn't know that was Harry Mandel until years later.
Same, I didn't watch St. Elsewhere. I was, that wasn't on any kind of home media or syndicated that much. So it was definitely interesting. I mean, he's not even, I don't know about part 2, but in part 1, they just credit all the gremlins, but they don't say which ones were the voice of which. You got plenty of familiar Scooby-Doo Transformer voiceovers there too. Like Frank Welker. And so it's like, that's awesome. Those are the start of seeing them. And, people don't even realize how many creatures they've actually seen them voice, but they didn't realize it,
Yeah.
And I think more or less, it's just a creature feature. What's missing from these kinds of movies nowadays is everybody, I think, likes to just overdo it to where I'm not saying there's too much violence necessarily or sex. It's just like, or even just it's boring. It's just more just they don't know how to kind of keep it going. There's always just some dead space in between the money shots, so to speak, of the, creature mayhem. And so it's like, okay, you got to work on everything here because there's a lot of wrong sauce.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I can only think of how many nowadays. There's probably 2 of them that I like, even though they're both different from one another. And that's, well, I'm the one that likes the Meg.
I thought the Meg was a lot of fun, but like you say, is like everybody was just like, I hate how that's animated. It's like you only saw the trailer. The trailer. Half the time they use the unfinished stuff, and I will. I'm sorry, I will take this over. Tom Cruise being chased by mummies. I will. And
true. Very true.
I mean, Deep Blue Sea. I liked it growing up. It hasn't grown on me as much now, but it's definitely better than the sequels. Good God, it's like that.
I actually do like the first. I still like it to this day.
No, it's all good.
Wonka CGI, even the sequels.
The CGI is fine, and I like Thomas Jane. It's just one of those. I don't know. I just felt it wasn't. It takes a while getting to where it's going, but it's still got its moments. There's a reason it's a cult hit, and
yeah.
But you see part 2, and it's just so lifeless. You could easily mistake it for one of those open water movies.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, no. And
it's
to
like
make it
the first one. You should apologize now, because that's what the first one is.
Exactly. I will say this. I do recommend 47 Meters Down. They're apparently doing a 3rd one of those. I just covered that already on the show. Definitely recommend. Because those are imperfect as they are, but compared to other shark movies, they're at least giving you something to go on as opposed to, I'm waiting for the next shark attack because everything else here is boring. It doesn't pretty much, and they sneak in a few other surprises there. And again, they're imperfect. They're going to have unlikable characters, but you also have just some other kind of mayhem. And is like, you kind of, compared to other movies, those in the Meg, even the Shallows, I just accept the escapism of them. Because at least they put some serious thought into how it was angled, how the suspense was driven. The shark is clearly CGI, but it's not to the point where you're like, that just looks too cartoonish to be taken serious.
True.
And unfortunately, there's been plenty of other shark movies where it's like, no.
Yeah.
Just as bad as some of these dinosaur asylum type movies where it's like, why bother? There's just not a movie here.
And well, the other one I liked, well, actually, I love this one from last year was Crawl. That was
Yeah, everybody's was on the fence on that one. I'm like, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? I don't see anything wrong here. I am not the most crazy about this filmmaker and all these other guys, but I get it. I get why he's beloved. It's kind of like Hard Rain and all those other kinds of, thieves trying to get their treasure back, and but with Crocs. And Barry Pepper was really good, and it was just so funny. A friend of the show, Shane Cronigan, was on his movie review crew podcast, and it was just so funny how one of them, I think it was Aaron, was just like, no, this is worse than Sharknado, and they're like, seriously?
Really?
It was like, it's not that bad. It's not a movie that's intentionally bad, but then having other people who aren't in on the joke and just shit-tacular, I shouldn't say shit-tacular, just flat out dog shit stuff is like, no, this one, I mean, the music was good. It's clearly green screen, but not in a way where you're like, it doesn't look finished or well rendered. It was, and I mean, the whole family dynamic was interesting there too, because it's not really something you see in these kinds of movies. And I mean, it didn't pretend to be anything it wasn't. It was a B creature feature with some decent acting and music score.
Good direction, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's always been good at gore. I just haven't always. I mean,
I wasn't like a big fan of his either, but
Mirrors and Hills Have Eyes, Dead Tension. I understand why he's often liked, because he at least is still trying his best to put some thought into how the mayhem is orchestrated versus just be the wanking off, hoping you stay awake for the next kill scene. It's like, yeah, okay, no, he's not that kind of guy.
True.
Yeah, but
I just thought I worked with his direction because he focused more on tension than just flat out gore like in some of his other movies.
Yeah, I know some people like the other version of Piranha. I'm just kind of like, what? Okay.
I was more like, I like the cast, but they're not really used that well. That's it.
Yeah. Whew. So, any other kind of just creature franchises you just kind of want to throw into the mix that you feel deserve kind of the name because they've kind of made the so-called subgenre kind of proud? Like,
well, I don't know about franchises, but I know one I always talk about, I just mentioned to you earlier, was Deep Rising. That's one I always...
I'm surprised there weren't other versions of that, but it didn't need it. It was just kind of a one and done. It's still often talked about. And so I guess what was interesting is there's just so many other movies. There's like, again, I mentioned The Shallows. I recommend that one a lot. It's just a very good looking shark attack type film. I actually don't mind the first Shark Attack. Yeah, basically take Ernie Hudson from, if he were still the goofy version that he was in Congo, and then had him as the villain, and then you had Casper Van Dien, fresh off Starship Troopers as the scientist, and it was just, it really doesn't have much to do with the shark. It's more of those typical New Image films, Operation Delta Force, Danger Zone, all those other, mayhem in South Africa movies. But I thought the Shark Attack stuff that was interweaved in it was just fun, but now I cannot say that about the sequels. The sequels were, oh my god. It's like...
I never bothered.
Right. Part 3 is best known as the I want to go home and eat your pussy.
Yeah. That
featuring a future star of Torchwood, and it's like, Jesus, this is like, and part 2 is definitely the worst of the worst. I mean, you weren't expecting much when it's David Worth of Warrior of the Lost World, but it's like, jeez, okay, I understand the love for Kickboxer, but it's like all the other movies I've seen by him, it's like, just that man has clearly not been around any actual human being. I am convinced, because if his actors are not only like just acting very cliche, very unrealistically, then they're either just let down by just not being very good at their jobs and him not, focusing on all the crap that no one cares about. It's like, damn. And the shark, it's a shame on the shark stuff because it is not convincing at all. Like, you're clearly seeing a puppetry hand sticking out, what looks like a cardboard.
Yeah.
The thing isn't even moving, and it's like, oh my god, no quality control here. Was this meant to be the dummy and you rendered it in post? No? Okay. I give. I'm going to cover them at some other end, but boy, howdy, it's going to be rough. So, where can we find you on the interwebs?
Well, on Twitter, I'm at ActionFan555. I'm on Instagram. You can just type in Jonathan Mark. It'll be on there.
Woo!
So, but now, like I said before, this is type of films that I love, and
right.
I hate when you can tell when people don't give two shits about them.
Right.
My God, I could name some, but you've already named quite a few of them.
Oh, too many.
I'll tell you this real quick. Because I was in high school when that came out, and people were just raving about that, and I'm the one going,
which one?
The Sharknado.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, everybody was like, this is so great. And I'm like, what the hell's so great about this? This is just them pretending like they're making a so bad it's good movie, but failing at it completely. I don't get it. Especially the scene with the chainsaw. That's when I was like, yeah, I'm done.
And just people that just did not give a shit. There's barely anything resembling a story, and I get that.
Nope.
I have to always respectfully disagree. I get that some people like it just because it's just so bad and they're bad movie addicts, but I also have a limit. It's like, I can handle some bad movies. I can make fun of the really bad Leprechaun or Wishmaster sequels, and then when I get to Puppet Master, I'm going to talk plenty of shit about that, and that's going to be very amusing. But at the same time, if it goes beyond just, I don't know. If it just gets to the point where not even can you make fun of it in an Evil Dead kind of way, where you either like it, or you love to hate it, or it's whatever, if it gets to even that level where you're just like, I don't know what to make of this. This is not a movie. And
yeah, I've only seen like the first two, especially. I saw the second one because, of course, they had Judd Hirsch there.
Oh, dare playing a taxi driver.
And I was like, oh God, why?
I have not seen it, but it's one of my favorite How Did This Get Made episodes. But boy, howdy, I could not suffer through it alone, or even with friends. It would just be too much. I haven't tried the riff tracks yet. I'm not a fan of when they redid stuff that was already on MST, or just stuff that was, again, just intentionally bad. Is like, I think you need to stick with stuff like The Room or Neil Breen and all this other crap that's just like, wow, what is this?
Yeah.
So thank you for hopping aboard, and
you're welcome. Yeah.
Talk again soon.
Yep.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a jacked up